If you have a big fragrance collection, you'll probably understand or realize that you typically only wear between 10 to 15 different fragrances, if even that. So in today's video, I will talk about my recent fragrances that I cannot stop going back to. This is not a ranked list, and I'm going to start with an honorable mention just because I only have a 5 ml of this, and I need a bottle soon. Maison Margiela's By the Fireplace. If you know me or you've watched some videos from my channel, you know that I typically like the darker, more interesting notes, such as oud or chestnut, vanilla, smoky notes, something like that. So this mixes some of my favorite notes ever in perfumery, and you'll see that later in the video. One of my favorite notes, probably in my top 3, is Gaiac wood. Gaiac wood is a smooth and slightly smoky wood that really rounds out fragrances and makes them last longer, and it is one of my favorite things, and it's blended extremely well in Maison Margiela's By the Fireplace. And you're also getting vanilla and chestnut in here, so slight hint of smokiness. I know the name By the Fireplace might make you think that it's very smoky, and it's not, but there is a very nice smokiness, a palatable smokiness. So it's nutty, vanillic, and woody. It has the perfect amount of smokiness to where the average person would not mind the smokiness, but also it's smoky enough to where niche lovers aren't going to be like, no, this is too designer or too boring for me. I think that along with the 2011 Dior Homme Intense formulation, By the Fireplace is the greatest or one of the greatest designer fragrances of all time, and it's perfectly down my alley. It's very autumnal, slightly smoky, vanillic, woody, nutty. It's perfect. In terms of notes, everything here pretty much follows a similarity in terms of either a smokiness, a nuttiness, a booziness, something vanillic, except for Xerjoff Zafiro. Although there are some complex fragrance notes that I do love in this, like oud and honey in the base, most of the notes in here are things that are either very unusual or things that I don't typically like, such as white wine, elemi, which is a resin, it's almost similar to raisins in a way. It has bergamot, of course, which I'm not a huge fan of, even though it's in like every fragrance. It's hard to pinpoint why I like this so much. It's like peppery on the opening, very peppery, and I don't even think there's pepper listed in here. But another funny thing about Xerjoff Zafiro is that when I first got it, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I thought it was a little bit too mature for me. I thought it smelled a little bit too old man-y. But the more I sit with this, the more I realize that it's such a gorgeous blend. Performance is not great on my skin, although people say it's really good. But it's just such a cozy fragrance, and I love this. So Xerjoff Zafiro. We are returning back to the note of chestnut in Givenchy Gentleman Reserve Privé. So this fragrance is so nice. I remember seeing a YouTube video a couple years ago saying that if you like iris, if you like chestnut, if you like boozy notes, and you have not smelled this Givenchy Gentleman Reserve Privé, which is relatively new, I think it's like a 2022 release. I don't know who recommended it, but they said you need to go smell it now. So I went out and smelled it, and oh my gosh, this is incredible. I have 2 bottles of this, 300 total milliliters. This is like the perfect autumn and winter fragrance. Gentleman Reserve Privé opens with a very smooth iris and chestnut opening with a touch of booziness, not over the top. Givenchy Gentleman Reserve Privé opens with a very smooth and creamy whiskey, iris, and chestnut combination, and it's incredible. When it sits on my skin, it kind of leans a bit towards chocolatiness almost, which I'm not complaining about, but I know some people don't love that. However, if you like boozy notes, if you like nutty notes, and if you like the iris in like Dior Homme Intense or Valentino Uomo Intense, you're going to like this. Givenchy Gentleman Reserve Privé. Speaking of Valentino Uomo Intense, that is the next up on my list. This is the newer formulation, and this is incredible. This is one of the most sophisticated iris and leather fragrances I've ever smelled in my entire life, and if you don't believe me, look on the Fragrantica reviews. I'll put it up on the screen somewhere. I think this is the highest rated fragrance I have with more than like 1,000 votes. It's absolutely insane. Gorgeous blend, gorgeous fragrance. Get your nose on this. Alrighty, so this thing is so smooth. So my main caveat with this fragrance is that the opening smells a little bit like carrots in a way that sometimes iris or orris root can go a little bit carroty or just like rooty in general. And this kind of does that in a way. It's not off-putting, but it is definitely a little shocking if you're not used to that. However, that quickly dissipates if you even smell that at all, which not everyone does, and you are left with the smoothest iris and leather combination that I've personally smelled in a fragrance. This is gorgeous for the winter. I cannot recommend it enough. I'm not sure whether this is like discontinued. I think that the original formulation of it was, and I think this is here to stay. Just in case, I would check this out, at least sample it. Valentino Uomo Intense. All right, let's visit the other end of the spectrum and go to smoky fragrances in A City on Fire by Imaginary Authors. Beautiful atomizer. And oh my gosh, this is smoky. This is a little bit animalic. This is challenging. That's what I'll say. If I had to describe this to someone who has never smelled it, I would say it smells like a city on fire. I know that sounds so stupid. That's the name of the fragrance, but that is genuinely what it smells like. It smells like burning wood, burning buildings. There's almost a sense of chaos in here. So the only issue that people do get with this fragrance is, first of all, with these types of fragrance, I actually think that the sillage should not be that strong, and that is the case with this. It's like a moderate projection, which is very nice, and I don't know how they did that with something that's this heavy. But another issue is that with A City on Fire, some people think it smells like barbecued meat, and I don't get that personally, but I know a lot of people do, and most people do not want to smell like that. So for sure, sample before you buy. Imaginary Authors, A City on Fire. I know I've got a lot of favorite notes, but this blends 3 of my favorite notes in amaretto, coffee, and vanilla. If you have not heard of this by now, it is Mancera's Amore Cafe. And let me tell you, this is gorgeous. Amore Cafe is based off of an affogato, which is a dessert. It is vanilla ice cream and a cappuccino. You kind of take it together, you pour the cappuccino on the vanilla ice cream, it melts the ice cream, it creates this beautiful concoction of ice cream and vanilla and coffee with a slight nuttiness from the amaretto. This is a beautiful fragrance. So this is a very gourmand fragrance, and it is sweet. So if you don't like sweet fragrances, then you're gonna want to stay away from this. Although if you like gourmand fragrances, if you like coffee, amaretto, some nuttiness, if you like vanilla, sample Amore Cafe. Alrighty, we return back to Gaiac Wood, but this time we are incorporating smoke in Imaginary Authors' Memoirs of a Trespasser. This is extremely realistic in the woody note. So the Gaiac Wood here is almost giving it an oak barrel essence, and I think that it even says oak barrels in one of the notes, although it is an imaginary note, which is something that this brand specializes in, but it really does smell like an oak barrel. I would not say that Memoirs of a Trespasser is a sweet fragrance, although there is a vanilla that balances it out, smooths it out, keeps it from being too dark, but very Gaiac Wood heavy, so a little bit of a smoke coming from that, not nearly anything like A City on Fire, although it is still smoky. Vanilla, Gaiac Wood, there's some myrrh in here, sandalwood, just a very woody fragrance, very heavy on the vanilla. Memoirs of a Trespasser. This next one is a little bit of an outcast compared to the notes. It's kind of like how Xerjoff Zafiro was, and this is Guerlain's Vetiver Parfum. So if I remember off the top of my head, the only notes listed in here is vetiver, juniper berries, licorice, and smoke. But let me tell you, this is my current favorite fragrance of all time. And I know I say current because this changes all the time. This is my recently most worn. I have 2 bottles of this now, and I would suggest anyone who has not heard of this or has not smelled this to get a sample right away. So I know vetiver can be a little bit of a scary note just because it can be very earthy or very dirty in a way, very rooty as well. This is not one of those fragrances. This is a very aromatic, slightly sweet, slightly smoky, but I would not classify it as a smoky fragrance, with a touch of licorice that balances everything out. And let me tell you, this thing is beautiful. Guerlain's Vetiver Parfum is so special to me just because it's blended so well to where it will sit on your skin for like 10 to 12 hours. So it'll last a very long time, but the projection is not too strong. It's not going to hurt anyone's nose. So it kind of wafts up throughout the day. And this has actually happened to me before. I'm like, someone in this room smells so good, and I'll realize it was my fragrance wafting off of me. So Guerlain's Vetiver Parfum, try it if you have not. This is a very, very great underrated fragrance. Not very many people talk about it, and it is my current favorite. Okay, 3 more to talk about. This one is the most polarizing. Actually, it might not be. It's one of the most polarizing though. at least compared to a lot of the other ones on this list. And this is Koyum by Orto Parisi. I do not have the full bottle because I hadn't smelled it before, and I was not going to blind buy something that people said was so polarizing. Wow. So right off the bat, you're hit with this pungent animalic leather with a heavy woodiness. So this is a very dark fragrance. To me, this is not off-putting at all, although I know that the average person would smell this and be like, what is that? If you are a person that is nervous about animalic notes, well, first of all, definitely sample this because it is animalic. However, it is blended so well that it doesn't smell funky in the way that you would assume or the way that you are used to in animalics. My best way to describe Koyum is if someone smoked a whole pack of cigarettes in a leather car and it was sitting in the sun for like 2 days, you open it and kind of get hit by that like stale scent of the car. I think that's a perfect way to describe this. This will last about 20 hours on skin, large projection. This is not the fragrance to wear in public. It's kind of more of a fun thing to smell yourself, unless the people you're with don't mind this, which I think would be pretty crazy if that were the case. I have not met very many people that like this, although a lot of people like smelling it because it's so interesting. So if you have not smelled it yet, Orto Parisi's Koyum. Alrighty, so down to the last two on the list, and the next one is by Zoologist, and this is Camel. So the reason why I said that Koyum might not actually be the most challenging on the list is because Camel might be the most challenging. I wear this almost every night before I go to sleep. Not like right before I go to sleep, like an hour or two before. But this is possibly my favorite fragrance of all time, although right now it's Guerlain's Eau de Parfum. Every time I smell this, I fall more in love with it. It is a very smoky, dried fruits, and very animalic fragrance. So I think that the animalics in this are actually a little bit more noticeable than in Koyum, just because there's not leather in this. It's kind of a weird contrast between these sweet and tart fruits, even like dried fruits, and then this smoky, deep animalic oud and civet in the base. And I think it's a gorgeous contrast. I think that this is one of the best perfumed fragrances in the world. I don't have a full bottle yet, but I'm flying through this, so this is definitely going to be one of my next purchases. So if anything that I just said sounds interesting to you, go and sample Zoologist Camel. And last but not least, we are returning to vanilla, we are returning to Gaiac Wood, and we are returning to a slight smokiness in Mancera's Oud Vanille. I've talked about this a lot recently because it is one of my recent pickups, a couple weeks old, and oh my goodness, this thing, it's blowing me away. So the story with Mancera's Oud Vanille is that I had heard very many good things about it. I love oud, I love vanilla, I love Gaiac Wood, and there was a very supposedly prominent Gaiac Wood note in this, and I love Mancera. So I blind bought it. I was a little bit nervous, but I sprayed it a couple weeks ago when I first got it, and I was not impressed, and not in a bad way. I was like, it's a pleasant smell. It smells good, but it was not what I was expecting. And whether I got accustomed to it or it's changing, slight maceration, I don't know what happened, but this is maybe my most worn. No, it's probably my second most worn right now, even though it's a little bit too hot for this fragrance still. So I'm very excited for the weather to become cooler so I can wear this every day. This is a very Gaiac Wood heavy fragrance and a very vanillic fragrance. I don't even smell oud in here really. I mean, there's a sharp woodiness, not sharp in an astringent way, but a sharp woodiness in where it's one of the first things you smell when you spray this fragrance. But when I first got this, I smelled very heavy wood, very heavy vanilla, but it was not smoky in the slightest. And I heard that people were saying that the Gaiac Wood was giving off a little bit of a nutty smokiness. That is one of my favorite things in perfumery. And for example, By the Fireplace, the Gaiac Wood gives a very nutty, smooth smokiness, and that is something that I love. So when I heard people say that Mancera's Oud Vanille had that same nutty smokiness from the Gaiac Wood, I was so excited. And when I first smelled it, I didn't get that at all, and I was really disappointed. However, a couple days later, I sprayed it again, and it absolutely wowed me. This is such a smooth, woody, vanilla, Gaiac Wood, slight smokiness fragrance, and I cannot recommend this enough for people that like that scent profile. So if you like Gaiac Wood, if you like vanilla, if you like slight smokiness, nothing like incense or, the actual smoke note, but you like a little bit of a deep smokiness, then definitely check out Mancera's Oud Vanille. If you have made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, and I actually have one more honorable mention to give to you guys. The last fragrance I'm going to talk about is also by the House of Guerlain, and this is L'Homme Ideal Eau de Parfum. This is such a gorgeous fragrance. It is a very smooth amaretto, cherry, slight liquor vibe, and a very small hint of leather in the base. This is smooth, very well blended, as you know all of Guerlain's fragrances are. I think this is one of the best masculine cherry fragrances of all time. The reason I have it as an honorable mention is because although I have been wearing it a lot, I get very abysmal performance on my skin, about 4 to 5 hours with a very low projection. And that's not like an issue, and I'm sure, maybe I'm going nose blind to it, but just because I haven't smelled it on myself as well as some of the other ones, I haven't worn it as much. But I'm hoping that either I get used to it or maybe I'm just going nose blind. But I don't even care about the performance too much because this fragrance is so gorgeously blended and such a great smell. So Guerlain's L'Homme Ideal Eau de Parfum. If you have not heard of this, which I'm sure a lot of you have, check this one out.